Hi, this is Make a Geek, and I'm Dan. Welcome back to the workshop. It's time for State of the Workshop 2021. It's a brand new year. 3 years running now, I think. I've, at the beginning of the year, put out a video just kind of capping on what I did in the last year and where I am in my workshop. I don't know how much anyone else gets out of it, but I've enjoyed doing a look back at last year's video for this time to be reminded of all the things that I thought I was going to get done, which I did not do or work on, but also to reflect on how much has changed during the last year. For better or worse, I got quite a lot more time in the workshop in 2020, and I got to focus on some incredible overhauls. So I guess the first thing to kind of highlight is it's much brighter in here. Now, I had done previously some like painting bits and bobs white, but in this year my wife helped me pretty much reshuffle everything in this workshop to lay down a new floor and respray all the walls and ceilings so everything is a nice consistent white. There's brightness everywhere. The floor looks great. Let's take a look at the floor. The floor is now all of these interlocking hard plastic tiles. It was not super cheap, but this laid over the concrete. It's much easier to sweep. It's a nicer surface to work on. I love it. It makes the whole room feel much more, I don't know, nice to work in. That was great. So that, obviously, huge difference to the workshop. It took quite a while, a couple of weeks, whilst we kind of shuffle things around, I guess. The main work happened in maybe a few days, but took a while to get everything done. I got to use my air compressor to do paint spraying for the first time. This kind of bobbly, breeze blocky stuff, I had previously painted bits of it with a brush. It doesn't get very white because you're not really getting paint in, but the sprayer did a fantastic job. So that was probably the main change in 2020. The other obvious improvement, which you've hopefully just experienced, is that I now have a robot in the middle of my workshop to mount the camera on. So let's have a quick look at what that looks like from my point of view. So there are a number of videos of this beast mounted on a stool, a camera gimbal, and self-view. This lets me do a lot more interesting stuff, hopefully. Well, interesting to me. And that has been pretty cool. In fact, one of the things I noticed watching the review last year was this screen was a Christmas gift last year and is now the Raspberry Pi kind of brain of the robot cameraman. So that was quite pleasing to see. So that has radically changed the way I make films in here. I'm not moving tripods around a lot of the time. It does mean I spend probably too much time faffing with controls and setting up shots and such. But that has been pretty exciting. So now that's the overall, those are the big changes. But let's, as we do every year, take a tour around the various corners of the workshop and see what's new. Let's see, I think I usually start over in the welding corner. So let's start there. Yeah, not much has changed on this corner of the workshop, I think. I did, obviously, this used to be too deep with stuff. Got rid of that. Resprayed the shelf fronts as part of the overall aesthetic. Thank you very much. Yes, what else to say about this corner? I think last year I was talking about the bandsaw, which I'd actually had the previous year, being a workhorse. It's been such a workhorse that, unfortunately, one of the tires has broken, so it is out of action at the moment, and frustratingly I cannot find these for love nor money in the UK, and to order what looks like the right kind of thing, essentially the DeWalt version from the US, they're like $20 each plus like $15 shipping plus $15 tax. You end up spending half the price of the machine just to get spare tires. So if anyone has any hints on where I can get replacement tires for the, what was the Aldi Work Zone metal cutting bandsaw, also I think Shapak has a version of exactly the same thing, white labeled. But yeah, so that's this side. In keeping with last year's theme, also some Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, new toys in the workshop. Couple of new air tools, little mini cut-off disc tool, which I'm looking forward to putting to use, and an air die grinder. I got a bunch of bits for this. That will be useful during the year. Lots of metal projects happened during the year, and we'll get on to the main one for that later. Obviously, at the beginning of 2020, I got my wonderful TIG welder, which I talked about then. I've had a lot of chance to play with it. I'm still not very good, but I did put up a video about 6 months in about some of the stuff that I'd learned. That was quite interesting, and I've played a lot. It's a magical machine. I highly recommend people play with TIG welders. Yes, you should definitely do that. What else is there? Did finally, after, when was this? Sometime in the summer, I think, I decided I did in fact deserve a cordless angle grinder. Again, doing a lot of metal work, a lot of metal cutting, and then grinding and sanding. Having the sander on a cordless one, like, it doesn't have obviously the same amount of staying power and grunt as the corded one, but having the corded one with cutting discs all the time and the cordless with flap discs is pretty useful. That has been awesome. Right, let's go this way. This corner is pretty, I would say, fairly unchanged, in that there is still the Ox CNC here in the corner. It is about 2 foot further back than it was. Previously, I had like a freestanding structure with bikes tucked behind it to try and keep them out of the way. As part of renovating the garage, I finally got to get the bikes out of here and free up that space, which is great. Gave me, it's funny how something like that, it doesn't seem like a lot of space, but actually just being able to shift that backwards and getting more, open things up really nicely. I'm afraid it's quite messy over here at the moment, not least stuff in the midst, and some of the bits I haven't quite still sorted out since doing all this reorganization. But over here on the shelves, a little bit of a lick of paint, some new storage units for a bunch of small hardware, nuts and bolts and that kind of stuff, magnets, springs, router bits. So quite improved from last year's haphazard stuff. All of my casting and resins and all this kind of stuff is here, along with some glues. Plumbing parts, electrical parts. At least it's sort of broadly kind of set together in like-minded things, and I can know where to get them. I have been considering making some kind of an enclosure for the CNC machine to try and keep dust away. It's one of those things that comes around occasionally as I think about it. It makes access to the machine more awkward, but to keep kind of sawdust and noise in would be beneficial. I don't know, maybe that might be a 2021 project. We'll see. I haven't actually used the CNC machine that much in the last few months, so it must be about due to come back into fashion, as it were, in terms of the builds that I'm working on. But we'll come around to what has got my attention at the end of this video. Teaser. Right, so that brings us back to here where we started. One of the things I did, at some point I was convinced that I was going to, let's just bring you around a bit more. At one point I was convinced I was going to build a bigger, better workbench. This time last year it was about, a metre and a bit wide by about 600 mil deep. It was at what one point in its life was the table saw of death, with an old circ saw underneath. And I took it apart as part of taking down everything. I knew that I wanted a new one. I had bought some steel to make a new one. And then temporarily I made this. Let's see if I can get it all in frame. This is a fairly small workbench. It's on wheels, as everything in my space I try to put on wheels. It has the vise. It's not the most stable base for a vise, has to be said. Has little vise, has a cutting mat. What it does do is, it's a small space that I'm relatively better at tidying clean when I need to, and it gives me a base for some stuff. And at the moment, I think maybe I don't need a large dedicated workbench. Maybe I just need this. We'll see. We'll see how 2021 gets on. I have the controller for the robot, and that goes in a little dock down here, which is nice. And I put all of these little markers all over it because I tried this year, as I did mention in the previous years, I wanted to do some more kind of camera, I guess, visual effects stuff. Spend a bit of time playing with visual effects, and tracking markers to go with the moving camera helped do some of that. That was quite fun. But yeah, so maybe a big workbench was not required, and I put the steel to better use. I almost don't want to show you this next section because it is really messy at the moment, but let's continue our path. Let's get this out of your way. So what's good in this section? So this is causing a lot of mess. This is the back plate from an old plasma TV that died this year. And it's a big slab of aluminium, which I'm trying to retain, but it did have a screen stuck to it, which I'm very slowly chipping off and kind of regretting life decisions, but it is what it is. So I won't show you the floor. It's covered in broken bits of glass and screen at the moment. But what I did do in the storage theming is I built a couple of big drawers into this. They come out on these nice big chunky rails. That allowed me to get a bunch of stuff off the top, get all of my screws and hardware, router bits, saw blades, spanners, etc. Some of the stuff for, I did some casting of pewter this year, all that good stuff. Chargers for the batteries, sanding discs and whatnot. So I was very happy with the drawers. They have helped clear the workshop. This is currently about 80% of this is stuff that I ripped out of a 3D printer that I disassembled and did a video on. That I don't know, I'll probably put a list of videos that are relevant from 2020 down below. As part of respraying the wall, I resprayed my rails so that they're yellow for no particular reason other than that it makes the whole place look a bit nicer. And in the corner here, we still have the laser, which was a massive feature of last year. In fact, the year before even. This continues to be an awesome tool. Love the laser and all its many capabilities. This back wall again, sprayed in grey and yellow, just to make it seem a bit more colourful and nice than I think it was just raw wood before. Excessive, but good. I think last year again, I had just gotten some of my first air tools, the nibbler I was talking about in the last video, and I mentioned making a design for hanging them up, which ended up being this little guy, a 3D printed piece screwed to just a scrap of wood, and there's just a little profile in there that the end of hair tools hooks into, so I can just, whenever I get a new one, print one off, screw it to a board, and allows me to keep all my air tools nicely organized, which has worked out really well. This area is still kind of a bit of a mess. The sharpening machine is here. Last year, I forgot to mention over in the Lord of God, last year I had the grinder over here along with the sharpener. I decided the grinder lives in the metal corner with the metal cutting and grinding. The sharpener still lives here next to the wood lathe. The wood lathe has not really changed very much in the last year. But let's have a look at this guy who is new. Ooh, chompy chompy. This was a gift from my wife for my birthday. I did a bunch of projects this year with sheet metal of varying grades, and cutting sheet metal on the bandsaw is fast, but it doesn't give the best edge. It's not that easy to get cut nice and straight. So I'd had my eye on one of these for a little while, and getting it mounted over here is great. So you can just line your cut up and nice, straight, clean cut edges. This is going to feature in more projects. In a lot of ways, weird though it sounds, this kind of is a great partner for the TIG welder, because the TIG welder, I'm often want to weld little boxes, little whatnots. I did a glasses case and such. I have attempted to make a Zippo case, although that has not gone well so far. But yeah, being able to cut the material quickly and to nice and square is a great start for that. Alrighty, so as we shift around from the big chomper, another area that has changed a fair amount. The shelves were here, albeit they are now painted and a little cleaner. The dust collector was not here. That was over by the door and on a stand trolley. I decided during the year that I could mount this on brackets against the wall, get rid of its stand, use storage underneath it, which is currently where the planar thicknesser is. So that's been good. That's got that thing kind of out of the way, using space in a more efficient manner. The other thing that I had distributed, and in fact I mentioned last year that my sort of belt sander, I'd kind of been moving it from the workbench back to kind of a shelf in the corner, trying to find a good place for it. I also have a couple of chop saws, so this year I built a cart, or rather I repurposed a cart that already existed. So this is my shop vac cart, so the hoover is beneath, and on top I have aligned the belt sander, a chop saw and a spindle sander, all kind of clamped to their parts of this, and it's all on wheels, so I can shift it about the place. It's not super convenient all the time, but it does move, which is nice. And I made a whole what's it called, manifold down the side here to connect all of the hoses, the vac hoses for them, so that I can basically select which tool I'm working with and just have a single mount point for the hoover. This was not a complicated project, but it was something that I had to live with for a while to figure out how to achieve it, and it has been very useful. I probably still predominantly use the belt sander more than most of the other things, but again, it's on wheels. I can move it to where I need it to be, but most of the time it lives right here, tucked away, giving me more floor space. That leaves the bandsaw, which again hasn't moved really. I think it might have shifted very subtly in this year. Broadly, it's very heavy and there's not a lot that needs to change about it, so it stays in the same place. That's that all tucked back away. So yeah, bandsaw, table saw, chop saw, all a little corner here from various chopping requirements, and offcut storage, sheet storage, long good storage. So there's actually racks that run all the way behind, there's a whole 3 meter run there, so that I can order 3 meter material, load it straight into the garage through the door. Pillar drill still tucked in this corner. Much used, but I don't know if there's much else I can say about that. But that does bring me to the big new thing in recent weeks, even recent months, I guess, is my new, much talked about, much thought about metal lathe. It was funny rewatching last year's video this morning to see me talk about thinking about a metal lathe. I'd been thinking about it for a long time, multiple years. And this year I pulled the trigger. Just a couple of months ago, I ended up going with the Warco WM180. I think I did mention like looking for suggestions of what lathes, and there's a million ideas out there. Ultimately, this guy was reasonably affordable. And there's a fantastic YouTube channel called Aid's Workshop, in which a very seasoned machinist who really knows what he's doing has one of these in his shed. And what better recommendation could you possibly have than somebody who clearly has a lot of experience machining, using one, understanding what it can do, what it can't do, and showing you various projects that he does on it. So I went with that. It is lots of fun. I've only really just started playing with it. I haven't made any videos about it yet, because at the moment, I say I'm basically just watching other people's videos on metalworking and kind of copying them, but I'm sure there will be some videos this year. But this does answer the question of what did I do with all the steel that I bought in thinking I was going to build a big workbench. This is my kick lift workbench. I think that's probably my most recent video before this one. This was a great little project, not very complicated really. 12-ish meters of box section, plus now in the video I did not have any drawers. I finished before adding any drawers, but these have been a fantastic addition. So I have some big big full width drawers right beneath the tool to store all of my at this point drill bits and spotting bits and chamfer bits and indexing cutters, etc, etc, etc. Keeping all of that to hand, but also very easy just to push out of the way. And then a larger drawer for cutting fluids and oils and some of the actual materials for turning, tap set, etc, etc. And I may create another drawer beneath there. I kind of thought I might do, I just don't really have anything I need to put in it right now. And the whole thing lifts off the ground and moves around when I need to, because everything should be on wheels. So yeah, this guy is amazing. I'm currently right in the middle of making a pen. I say in the middle of. I have a functioning basic stainless steel pen. I just need to remake some parts and finish some bits and whatnot. And I'm probably not going to make a video about it at all, because again, I'm still learning. I don't really have much to say about it, but it is great. As much as I love the TIG welder, and I love the TIG welder, I also love, let's face it, clearly I love all of the tools. The laser and the TIG welder and the lathe. They're really all fun processes, and I'm currently really enjoying what you can do with steel and brass in the home workshop. And that is almost it, I think, for the State of the Workshop 2021. Oh, except I did, let's see, can we see it from here? Wrong way. I mentioned last year that I was going to put a projector in, which I did get around to. So we do have a screen back here. I do have a projector, and I can isolate the front lights so that the projector actually projects. You know, as I think I mentioned last year, I'm a very lucky man, and I appreciate that. I have all the toys and a projector in my workshop, because who doesn't have a projector in the workshop? So yeah, I can have the projector on and recap on State of the Workshop 2020 at the end of 2021. And see, same jumper. Apparently I do that at Christmas, I guess. I noticed that this morning as well.
The State of the Workshop 2019 video that I made.
Anyway, I hope this has been of interest to someone other than just me, but in any case, thanks for watching, see you next time, and if you subscribe and hit the like button thing, then I probably won't make much difference to me. I'll still make videos whether you like them or not, but YouTube seems to like that kind of thing, so make YouTube happy. Click those buttons. See you next time.